Welcome to Biz Bites, brought to you by Com Together, helping businesses like yours build their brand through telling amazing stories to engage and grow audiences on multiple platforms. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Biz Bites. And I've got a guest with me today who is in a space where I don't think we've actually talked to anyone in this space in the podcast so far. So I'm looking forward to hearing a little bit more about Broker Performance Partners. And Varant from there is our special guest today. Thank you for joining us. And please do a proper introduction of yourself.
Hey, Anthony, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. My name is Varant, or lots of people know me as VB. And I guess a little bit about myself, just to set some context. I'm a serial entrepreneur, so I've been dibbling and dabbling in my own startups for the last 15 years, or not dibbling and dabbling, I've been right in there, all the way from education to software as a service, and now back to kind of education again. And I guess for the human side, I'm married for 13 years to my high school sweetheart. I've got two beautiful daughters, both under 10, 8 and 10. And I guess it's been an amazing journey being a father in the last couple of years, because I made it a special focus to be very present with my kids as they've been growing up, and it's just been an amazing journey. So that's a little bit about me. And on the side, what I do on the outside of work is I've gotten into sports and fitness quite a bit over the last couple of years. So just because I've been doing so much startup work in the last 15 years, I didn't really have time to branch out and do any extracurricular activities. But in the last 3-4 years, I've picked up soccer again. So haven't done that since I was 14. So I've been getting my ball skills back, getting back on the pitch, and having a good run. And it's good for the body, good for the exercise, and good for the mind as well. And my latest
a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's I tell you what, I admire you for getting back on the fitness train, getting back on the soccer or football pitch. It's I'm not sure I could do it anymore. I think those days might have passed me. I think there might be a few muscles that might say, "What are you doing?"
I get that all the time. Don't worry. I get cramps and injuries all the time. But just trying to be very conscious to make sure that I stay on the pitch and don't get involved in any crazy tackles or anything like that might wipe me out. And that certainly happened a couple of years ago. So I'm much more conscious about that these days. Let the young ones run around me, and I just do my game.
Yes. You just plant yourself in a particular position and hope that the ball comes to you so you can kick it on.
Correct.
So tell me a little bit more about the business and what you're doing these days.
Absolutely. So Broker Performance Partners is a very new business. It's only about 3.5 months old, and it was kind of born as an accident. So in my last role, I joined a mortgage broker firm, just because on the side, I do a bit of property investing as well, and I do some special projects here and there. And I've dealt with so many mortgage brokers over the last 10, 15 years. And in this particular case, I was a customer at this mortgage broker, and he sort of tapped me on the shoulder one day and said, "Hey, did you want to come on board?" And I thought, gee whiz, what a fantastic opportunity to jump into an industry that I'm already interested in regards to the property side, because there's two pieces to the puzzle. You've got the property itself, and then you've got the finances that you need to facilitate that property transaction. So I thought it'd be great to work in the engine room of a mortgage brokerage to find out and learn for myself as well how the industry works, how the industry ticks. Because once you're in it and you understand how it works and the mechanisms that are in mortgage brokerages, it might make my property investing path a little bit smoother as time goes on. So I was there for about a year, and my personal experiences with brokers over the last 10, 15 years has been a little bit mixed. You normally, or traditionally, when you speak to mortgage brokers who've been doing their craft for a number of years, they are a trove of information. They know the ins and outs, the tips and tricks, how to structure your finances and your loans to get that ideal outcome. But where it fell for me, or where my experiences were not that great, was when I was sort of passed on to other team members to then do all the administrative stuff of actually facilitating a loan. And that sometimes is a very frustrating experience. And it was, sometimes it was because of lack of knowledge from the staff members that were dealing with it, because there was a lot of intricacies in my application specifically. I guess I was termed a complex investor. And then the other aspects were, I had to keep on providing the same documents over and over again, just because we kept passing the time frames of when the lenders sort of said, your applications need to be this old, or documents you've submitted need to be this old. And that was frustrating because I was very time poor. And in this brokerage, kind of saw firsthand the inefficiencies that were there. I mean, it was a great brokerage firm, don't get me wrong, but there's always room for improvement, right? And I met my business partner there as well, Amanda, and together we embarked on a bit of a journey to transform that using my skills and her skills. So she came in with the training aspect on training the entire team on how to do the process to best practice. And she comes from a background of 23 years of lending on both the bank, so the lender side, as well as the broker side. So she kind of saw the perspectives on both sides. And I guess my background with building businesses and mastering the operational side, we kind of put our heads together and transformed the business. Within a period of six to 7 months, we had the entire team trained up, processes down pat and refined and articulated, and we were seeing greater transactions and a greater capacity as well as speed of transactions were dropped from almost 2 months down to the quickest applications we got through were in a matter of days. So that was very fulfilling. And the business unfortunately had to downsize, so we were left without prospects of what to do next. And she kind of tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Varant, I think we did something wonderful there. Instead of working for one individual company and providing our services and our skills, why don't we get together and see if we can help many more businesses together? Because we both get a thrill out of helping and watching something grow and flourish."
Mm. Yeah, I love that, because it's so nice when things kind of naturally happen and progress, and the difference you can make. Because it's interesting what you say about brokers being a fountain of knowledge, and I've had, like many people, I've had many experiences with brokers over the years, and a number of different brokers. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity in that space, because one of the things that I've noticed over the years is that brokers tend to be chasing the next one and not spending a lot of time on their past ones and the opportunities that are there within those clients. And I've found that experience quite fascinating. And the lack of support in many respects in there creates opportunities. And I think that's the interesting thing, that I've seen that there are opportunities within that space, and that's from a marketing perspective. But I also see that there's a lot of competition out there. I mean, there's a lot of brokers out there, aren't there?
There is absolutely. And I guess where our focus turned to was, yes, there is a lot of competition with brokers out there, but a lot of brokers have decided to niche down. So they're trying to carve their niche in the brokerage space. Some are property investors, some are SMSF investors, others are standard payroll, or they call it POIG applicants who would just want to buy their one home. They're not interested in investments, and while the reason why we sort of decided to put together Broker Performance Partners is there is a lot of training and education and mentoring that are fit for brokers. And there's around about 20,000 brokers in the country, but there isn't anything specific. There's no specific training for staff.
Mm.
And if you think about the numbers of, if there's 20,000 brokers, and if the average broker has, 2 to 3 staff, when we're talking about the smaller scale, that's that's a lot of people out there that are relying on their brokers or relying on the principals for knowledge, for upskilling, for training. And we saw a tremendous impact from training the team. The brokers have done their certifications, they've done their qualifications, they go to professional development days, so they've got plenty of opportunity for learning. But it's the team that stay back in the office and have to do all the deal handling and post settlement support and future follow-ups for customers that have already done deals in the past. If you train the team really well, it maximizes the impact of what the broker can do, and they can continue, like you said, to chase the next deal. And they can rest assured that their team in the background is looking after their existing customers really effectively and efficiently.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting space, isn't it? Because brokers, look, I'm thinking about 20 or so years ago were uncommon. I think it sort of started when there was a move away from the banks in terms of loan opportunities, or at least from the traditional 4 banks, and brokers started cracking into the scene, and it's built enormously over the years from that. But it's, as you say, it's been a kind of a natural development, and in many respects, things like training have been left behind, which creates opportunities as well for brokers to get ahead. I think that's the main thing here, isn't it? It's not just training for the sake of it. This is actually to move existing brokers ahead and improving what they do, and not just falling for the cookie cutter approach. Because that's, I suppose, one of the things that irks me is, having been someone who's attended many networking meetings over the years, and therefore ended up on mailing lists of many brokers. Once a month, I get the email from I don't know how many telling me what the Reserve Bank's done, which is in the news anyway, so I'm not quite sure I need the newsletter necessarily for that. But even more so is that the very templated newsletters that tend to come about with all of those things, and a lack of personality, a lack of really what makes one stand out from the next. And I think that entering into that part of the training is such a huge aspect for businesses to realize that it's not just about meeting people in a one-off and hoping they'll be on your database and they'll come back to you.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's but I wanted to talk to you a little bit about firstly about the serial entrepreneur and the startups. Tell me a little bit about that journey. I mean, what sort of things have you been involved with over the years, and to get you to this space?
Yeah, so it's been a bit of an eclectic journey. Started. My background originally, I did my education in computer science, so got into development and building technology solutions, and that was very early on, and found that working in data centers and working in the communication hubs in in some of the big banks that I was sort of doing my internship with didn't really fill my bucket. If you get my drift, the only people you could speak to was other developers or other technicians, and I was more of a people's person. And spending your Sunday 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the morning in a data center, because that's when everyone was offline, reconfiguring switches wasn't my jam. So I left the technical IT side, and I got into education. So my first job was actually business development for a IT certification company. So that's where my education sort of journey started. And I was there for a number of years, and I managed to, I guess, work with some very interesting clients, some big government agencies, and my favorite, Department of Defense, because boys with their toys, you get to see what the what those guys were doing on the tech side, and it was fascinating. And the results that the training delivered were also quite transformational for those teams, because they were setting up infrastructures based on the best practices that we were teaching. And I had customers for over a number of years that kept on, coming back and doing more certifications, more training, going back and implementing some amazing projects. And at the end of that journey, I thought, that I met my first business partner during that work as well, and kind of said, you know what, Varant, I think we can do this. We can do this whole training thing ourselves. We both love the industry. We both love seeing people transform from, from where they were, and then once they've gone through the training, the outcomes and the results and the transformations they're able to achieve if they apply the training they've learned. So we set up a registered training organization with a complete different pivot. We didn't focus on IT. We went to, business and management training. And that sort of just took off. And we did it in a different style. So I think our unique selling proposition for that was the fact that we were targeting existing workers, and we were breaking up the course, one day a month over 12 months with some mentorship in between, so that they can attend and upskill without them having to take five days or 10 days off work and sit in a classroom. It kind of the structuring of the training kind of fit for people. And we, within a period of 6 years, we started with our first class of 18 students. I remember this clearly, at the foot of Mount Panorama, because we ran our first class at Charles Sturt University.
I went to Charles Sturt University, so I know the foot of Mount Panorama very well.
You go. There you go. You might have been in the same training room that we delivered our first course in. And then, and that was just with one qualification, a business administration course. And then over 6 years, we built that up to, 72 qualifications on scope. So we became a registered training organization, and we delivered 16,000 qualifications, full qualifications, by the time I exited. So that was I guess that's where I cut my teeth on entrepreneurship. I was, I think, 26 or 25 when I started that. And we had a team of around, 55, 60 by the time I left as well. So, and most folks were much older than I was. So I was hiring, my old managers. I was hiring people that I'd worked with before, just to build, I guess, the dream team of people that I'm comfortable working with. So I exited that business, went to Hawaii for a month. I got really bored and itchy feet. And that was the sort of family getaway. And I told my wife, you know what, I want to get back into education because I loved it so much. So I set up another firm, which was more of a sales and marketing for other colleges. And unfortunately, that was a short-lived journey of 9 months. Government legislation changed, where essentially sales and marketing businesses for education were not allowed because there was a bit of turmoil in the industry and some dodgy practices that were happening with sales and marketing brokers. So I shut that down. And then not long after, I think it was within 6 months, set up a software as a service business, again in the education space, because I'm a bit of a process geek. And one of the tools that we'd built at my first company was a complete sort of end-to-end system on Salesforce, complete custom. So we took that solution, simplified it down, commercialized it, and then launched that. And I did that for a couple of years, and that was really exciting, because this time still working with education, but helping education companies amplify their reach, amplify their operations as well, so they can service the students much more effectively and get them from start to finish in a very smooth way, and make sure that their learning is delivered effectively at the end of the day. So exited that business a couple of years after I started it, and that was called Luana. So it was a Hawaiian. I fell in love with the Hawaiian spirit, so called it a Hawaiian name, which stood for happy and content, because once you've got the right systems and process in place, the business owners are happy and content, and so are their staff. And then so that was the last sort of startup, and then Broker Performance Partners sort of came on a couple of months ago, and I was working for others, a digital marketing firm and a mortgage brokerage in the time in between. So it's been a crazy journey.
It's quite a journey through all of those things, and obviously education and valuing systems and people are key factors there. So where does that stem from? I mean, what was the what were the influences in your early days from your parents and other people around you that sort of drove you in that direction, do you think?
Look, I was fortunate enough to go to a Armenian school up here in actually it's not far from where I am now in Terry Hills. My kids have just started there this year as well, and I had some incredible teachers, and I think teachers that the kind of teachers that you want to get an apple for every day and put on their desk because they were motivating, inspiring, and they would push you, and they wouldn't get angry at you. They would motivate you in a very human way, and that I think struck a big chord for me because from I could see from that time on how important it was to have a great teacher and a great mentor that will help guide you. And I think that's one of the reasons. One of my ethos is never stop learning, and any human is capable of doing anything if they put their mind to it and they just practice. So I guess that was one of the core motivators. And having that as a high school student from the age of 12, 13 all the way to 18, I think that sort of set the foundations of, hey, if you have the right mentor and the right teacher, you can achieve anything. And that's that. Yeah.
It's
I guess
it's a
that
really
was.
interesting thing. I think the influence that teachers or a single teacher can have on someone is so huge. I still have great affection for a high school English teacher that like I guess many people doing English, it was ticking the box, and I didn't really enjoy it. And he came in with such enthusiasm that it completely turned me around. And I don't think I'd have gone down the journalism path that I did if it hadn't have been for him.
Mm,
And I think that's always a huge thing. And it was also, by the way, it was really nice to go back to a reunion some years ago where he happened to come along, and I was able to tell him that. And I think that's a nice thing too, if people are out there and that often they're teachers that influence them. We don't always get an opportunity to go back and let them know the significant impact that they've had, and it's a nice thing to be able to do that when you can, because they play such a pivotal role in our lives.
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I just got chills hearing you say that as well. I think teachers need to be more appreciated these days because they're so pivotal in the journey of in a child's journey, and in future as adults. We have adult education as well. I was in there for a number of years, and the care and the care and attention that a teacher or a mentor can bring can have some dramatic effects on someone's trajectory as they go through their journey. So yeah.
Yeah, I think the way, and I think it does, as you say, extends into the mentoring and coaching area as well. And I think that simple installation of belief, which is clearly something that you mentioned that it was passed on to you in the early days, and that simple encouragement, particularly in a day and age where entrepreneurship is something that's becoming more and more popular,
Mhm.
and it only happens if people have a belief in their capability and their ability to deliver. And I think that has to come from an early age, and there has to be some pivotal moments that sort of say, "Go and do this on your own." That was the one thing I was going to ask you, was that what we all everybody makes that move from having experience being employed to going out on their own, but most that go out on their own do it once or twice, but you've done it a few times, and maybe you'll do it a few more times still. And
Who
so
knows?
I'm intrigued as to, but that first leap that you made to say, I'm going to go out and do this on my own, what was the launching pad for that?
Launchpad. Well, I think I had the luxury of being young and naive, and that helps a lot because sometimes if you overanalyze and overthink something, that might actually stop you from doing something. So I think as unsexy as that sound, I think being young and naive and thinking I can give this a crack, I sort of jumped face first into it, and I think the first few weeks in realized, oh my goodness, what have I signed up to? This is In my 9 to 5 job, or it was a little bit longer than that sometimes. In my 9 to 5 jobs, I had my set responsibilities. I only did sales or business development, and that was it. But when you become a business owner, you kind of have to do everything, right?
Mm.
And you would know that all too well. From You've got to do your marketing, you've got to do your finances, you've got to do your outbound sales, you've got to do your operations. You're kind of responsible for everything. And we bootstrapped that business. So it was literally in the first year, once we got our first office in Mascot, the founders, myself and my partner, at the end of the day, because we were still bootstrapping, we would pack up all the towels from the bathrooms. We would do some cleaning around the stuff that's unsexy. So the responsibilities were huge, um, and I think that was it was wonderful the way that it happened, because had I had known that, I probably would have had a bit of fear or a bit of resistance starting something. But now that I've gone through it a couple of times, I kind of you build a little bit of resilience. You've got a bit of track record under your belt, and you know how to sequence things a little bit better, and prioritize things a little bit better as you go on and do the next thing. It's training and education, right? It's a school of life.
Absolutely. And I think I love that because you've kind of summarized why you're in this space. The whole idea of education and people and going through processes, that's in a sense what you're delivering now in your current business. And it's kind of even though it's a very different space, working with brokers compared to where you've been in the past, the principles are the same, and the opportunities are very much there. And I think I always think it's great when people bring a fresh perspective to something. I mean, it's one of the luxuries of being a consultant, of course, is that you're always bringing that fresh perspective to someone's business. And I know that's one of my scheduled things to do this week is working with someone who has the skills but is so close to it that needs that fresh perspective in order to be able to develop that further. And I think that's what you're bringing to the table clearly with the work that you're doing. And I just wanted to wrap the podcast up with something that we often ask our guests. And I'm interested in your answer, particularly given what we've just spoken about, because it's that aha moment that people have when they start working with you and you think, gee, if only other people would know that they're going to have that moment. And so I like to give my guests a bit of an opportunity to share that with people, because the space that you're in many respects is a newish space, offering that kind of training and mentorship that hasn't been offered before. So it is that interesting idea of how do businesses know that they're going to have a real moment that's going to transform their business. So what does that come down to for you?
That's a great question. I hope I can articulate it well. And look, all goes back to the fundamentals. Everyone, even if you start working somewhere and you start acquiring skills, and I'll use soccer players as an example. You might practice and train yourself. You might join a team and do all these training sessions, but and you'll improve significantly over a certain period of time. But once you sort of hit your the 80% of skills that you need to know for that, that's sort of where you stop, and you can't keep growing. And only when a coach, a mentor, a teacher who knows how to break down the skills into smaller pieces, smaller chunks, and guide you to the practice that you would need to do to refine your mastery, you won't ever sort of reach mastery unless you've got a little bit of a nudge and a push. And I think relating this back to the broker industry, there is plenty of broker staff. So I'm referring to their staff members, not brokers, who join the industry. They work with someone and they get taught on the job, and then they move from place to place with the skill sets that they've built. But as soon as you bring in, and I think that we've had these aha moments in the last 3 months with our first cohort of students, even someone who's had years of experience when they sit with a trainer or a mentor that's seen with the perspectives from both sides, from the lender and the brokers, and they've seen, thousands of different scenarios that fit different customer types. The training and the best practices they receive, they're just like they hold their head and they go, oh my goodness, how did I not do this before? How did I not these best practices, even though I've been doing the job for the last 3 or 4 years, now I can see the difference in how it's shaving time in our applications. We're not having to get bounce backs back from the lenders for missing informations because they're going through the first time most of the time. And that's what effective training and effective coaching can bring, is getting people to mastery level. And if you've got a team that's being able to build some sort of mastery in how to process a loan application, that makes the job of mortgage brokers so much easier, because they can then, as you mentioned earlier, they can focus on the next deal, and have faith that their team is going to provide the same level of service, if not more, that they've been able to, because they're the knowledgeable subject matter expert in the field. That
Fantastic.
was a long but
no, I love that. I love that, and I think there's a lot there for people to learn from, and I think it's an important area. Then, whilst you're working in the broker space, there's many things that lots of other business areas can learn from that idea, and I think it's too often we just go along with what we've been doing and don't look at what that fresh perspective might be to perhaps do things a little bit better and do things differently, and not be afraid of change in there. Thank you so much for being an amazing guest on the program. I've loved the journey of serial entrepreneur and family man and time in Hawaii right through to what you're doing today. So we've covered and Mount Panorama somewhere in between all of that. So we've covered a fair amount of space. So thank you for being a great guest on the program. And of course, we will make sure that all the contact information for Varant is available in the show notes for the podcast. Thank you for being a great guest.
Thank you, Anthony. I loved your journey as well, and hopefully we can connect down the track and have a chinwag about each other's adventures, because you sound like you've got some amazing stuff that you've done too.
We will continue to share, no doubt, and to everyone listening in, stay tuned for the next episode of Biz Bites.
Thank you.
Biz Bites is brought to you by ComTogether for all your marketing needs, so you can build your brand, engage audiences on multiple platforms. Go to comtogether.com.au, follow the links to book an appointment for a free consultation.